never said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
All summer long, 2020, it was okay to burn our cities down. It was okay to riot. It was okay to loot. It was okay to cause violence in the streets. The media said it was okay. They actually encouraged it. Our politicians said it was okay. They felt that we were fighting the good fight for our cause. But most importantly, the left and our Democratic politicians had no problem, no matter how violent and chaotic things got. But all of a sudden, a mob, a handful of protesters who got out of control in Washington, D.C. last week, stormed the Capitol, and now all of a sudden, President Trump is wrong for inciting violence. After all, there's not a mention or a shred of evidence that he actually did it, but he's now up for impeachment. The hypocrisy has gotten out of control. The BS radars are about to explode. And here's how it all started. It started with the media giving us its blessing. Let's take a look at a video right here of CNN, of MSN, and every other media outlet encouraging and supporting the violence that happened all summer long during the BLM movements. Let's take a look.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That ain't a riot, what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis.
They are strictly principled anti-fascists, and they've taken a principled stand to stand against white supremacists and white nationalists wherever they may show up.
I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal morally.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's no organization is perfect. There was some violence.
Any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times.
But thank goodness for the looters, man.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I don't care that much about statues.
Shouldn't that be done by shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
What you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Do not get it twisted and think that, this is something that has never happened before, and then this is so terrible, and where are we, and these savages and all of that. This is how this country was started.
People get mad and people get sick of it. People are risking COVID to explain to this country that we're fed up.
Most of the major movements in American history have started at the grassroots level and at some point have turned into direct conflict with American government. So remember your history before you judge your present.
Thuggishness is thuggishness wherever it comes from politically, and we should be the first to call it out.
I disagree.
You can't make this stuff up. The media on several accounts have given us their blessing across multiple cities of violence. Nancy Pelosi, it is what it is. Chris Cuomo, who said who said protests need to be peaceful. He also said in the same breath, don't get mad if people rise up and get violent and speak up against their government. They made excuses for every single riot all summer long. And there's no denying it. It's right here on camera. You have just seen with your very own eyes. So now Trump supporters, they decide to protest at Capitol Hill. And I am not condoning by any means the Capitol breach. It was wrong. Violence is wrong on all accounts. It's the hypocrisy that we are arguing. So here we are, President Trump now facing impeachment charges for something that he absolutely had nothing to do with. And we can play the hearsay game all you want. The fact of the matter is, he encouraged his protesters and his audience to peacefully march to the Capitol. It's in writing, it's not disputable. What is disputable is the fact that there was, in fact, an attack on the Capitol. You can't deny that. That's not what anybody's arguing. What we're arguing here is whether President Trump did, in fact, incite violence. Before we look at some excerpts of his script, which clearly says how peaceful he wanted things to be, let's compare the BLM movement versus the Capitol Hill movement, the one-time Capitol Hill movement versus the dozens of Black Lives Matter movements. BLM riots, this is left-wing violence, mind you, versus right-wing violence. Okay, so as we get ready to impeach the president for inciting violence, let's take a look at what the other side also did. So BLM riots lasted 7 months. The Capitol riot lasted a couple hours. The BLM riots condemned mostly by Republicans. The Capitol riot was condemned by all Republicans and all Democrats. How funny is that during the BLM riots, we didn't hear the Democratic Party condemning those riots and those protests? We didn't hear a single peep out of them, yet I haven't heard them shut up all day on the Senate floor, discussing how outrageous and how incredibly unconstitutional this whole thing was. Constitutional? You now want to bring the Constitution into politics. Where were you, Democrats, when big tech slammed the door shut on Parler? Where Twitter removed the president from their platform. Now you want to talk about the Constitution, the party who is constantly threatening our Second Amendment rights. Now they bring Constitution into the game. So during the BLM riots, Democrats didn't condemn it, yet they condemned the Capitol riot. They encouraged, it was encouraged by the media and politicians, and I just played a video of exactly that. The Capitol riot was encouraged by only fringe political groups. It was not encouraged by Trump. It was not encouraged by anybody. It wasn't even encouraged by Trump supporters. They were screaming. There are videos of this. They were screaming, do not do it. Do not breach the Capitol. They knew what was going to happen. They knew what the media and the Democrats were going to make out of this situation if they breached the Capitol, and they begged this very small fringe political group not to do it. Police force was used in the BLM riots. Police force was also used at the Capitol riot. 23 plus people shot dead. One person shot dead during the Capitol riot. 700 officers injured during the BLM movements. Only 14 officers injured during the Capitol riot. 150 plus federal buildings were damaged during the Black Lives Matter movement. One federal building, and by damaged, I mean a few broken windows. Hundreds of small businesses destroyed during the BLM riots. No small businesses were destroyed during the Capitol Hill breach. No outrage from the left at all while supporting their cause. Yet nationwide outrage, and a call for impeachment over one incident that President Trump didn't even encourage and was very much against. So the hypocrisy has reached an all-time high. Here we are again in the midst of another impeachment hoax, which, by the way, is wasting everybody's time. This is a complete dog and pony show. Nothing's going to come from this thing. There has been overwhelming support on the floor today for President Trump, calling out the hypocrisy. Black Lives Matter and the violent protests gave the nation its blessing for violence. They opened up the floodgates and said violence is now acceptable. You don't get to pick and choose whether violence is wrong based on your narrative. It's wrong on all levels. Yet the left and the politicians and the media They gave us their blessing. So now you have a violent act at Capitol Hill and the nation's confused. I thought violence was acceptable. Nobody said anything before. Why would you say anything now? Why aren't they heroes for breaching the Capitol and standing up for their rights? After all, Kamala Harris bailed out plenty of criminals after they burned businesses to the ground because they were deemed heroes for fighting for their cause. It's the hypocrisy that blows my mind. It is the absolute idiocy of the situation that I fail to get my head around. And when I see people defend these movements, it's laughable. How do you not laugh at these people when they try to tell you the Capitol breach was different? How? How was it different? Because it was a Capitol building? Remember, 140 federal buildings were damaged during the BLM riots. How about the Kavanaugh hearings when they stormed the Senate floor or stormed the Senate building? There's been many incidences where we've seen a tremendous amount of violence. It's all hypocritical. It's all a dog and pony show. Nothing's going to come out of this except for further division amongst the American people. We are adding gasoline to an already raging bonfire. And because of that, we are not uniting this country. We are dividing it even further. Let's head over to the floor right now where they are live in Washington, D.C. Let's have a listen to some of these politicians and see who's actually supporting and who's against it and how hypocritical the entire thing is. Let's over to the keyboard warrior cam and take a look.
Insurrection with the intent of stopping the peaceful transfer of power. He attacked not just the Capitol, not just Congress, he even attacked democracy itself. That's why he must be impeached.
The gentlewoman's time is
and
expired.
I yield back.
The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Price.
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Chairman, the President has engaged in conduct that is criminal, impeachable, and profoundly threatening to our democracy. He pressed state officials and members of this body to overturn an illegitimate election and to keep him in power. And he then invited and activated a violent mob to invade the Capitol and achieve his desired result by insurrection. If that is not impeachable conduct, I don't know what is. The President must be removed from office immediately and never allowed to hold office again. Our democracy
The gentleman's
requires
time
it.
has expired.
Let's talk about this for a second. The president committed acts of violence. The president didn't do anything. The president held a rally and then he went home to his little Oval Office, White House. That's all the president did. And did he incite violence? Did he really try to incite violence? Well, let's take a look. Because everybody seems to be very confused right now at actually what happened here. So let's take a look at exactly what happened. The president said, "We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congresswomen and men. We're going to walk down to the Capitol." This is directly from his speech. "We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women." What part of "let's storm the Capitol" does that look like? Let's take it a step further. "We have to come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and politically make your voices heard." The president, even Senator Mitch McConnell said it, has every right to challenge the election process. He had every right to challenge potentially illegal votes. Mitch McConnell said it just a couple days after it was called for Biden. He had a tremendous amount of support from the Republican Party. So what's changed? Why all of a sudden is it now criminal to voice your concern? First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. He had an opinion. He exercised his right. He said, I don't agree with this. His base said, we don't agree with that either. And it's not because President Trump told us we shouldn't agree with it. It's because we watched what happened during the election. And I don't care what anybody thinks, it didn't look right. It did not look normal that ballot dumps came flooding in the middle of the night. It all looked very suspicious. Now, I don't know whether fraud was actually committed or not. I don't have security clearance, so I couldn't talk on that point. But I have a right to form my opinion, just like the president does. And that's exactly what Senator Mitch McConnell said he had the right to do also. We all had a right to take a look and make sure there was no potential fraud committed. So the president voiced his concern. He repeated it over and over. He challenged different states. His base got wound up. They came to his rallies. They came to his aid. They came to protest peacefully. Remember, according to BLM, even violent protests are okay. But he told his base to peacefully march down to the Capitol and make your voices heard. That's what happened. How does that sound like he was really telling them to attack the Capitol? Because as far as I'm concerned, it was very clear what he suggested that everybody did. Let's go back to the floor and hear what other people have to say right now live in Washington, D.C.
The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last summer, the Antifa and BLM riots swept all over our country. Cities were burnt, businesses destroyed, and lives violently stolen. And it wasn't just for an afternoon like those horrible hours we had on January 6th, but rather they went on for weeks and in some cases even months. So if there's any silver lining in this dark cloud, it's that our friends from across the aisle have come to realize that riots are bad. We conservatives have known this all along. This snap impeachment is a sham, and it didn't go through the Judiciary Committee, and it's not even about the president's actual words, but it's about how our Democratic colleagues want to interpret his words and fashion a particular meaning to them. Now, this is just political grandstanding at its worst. The American people desperately want us to move on and tackle the issues and find solutions to them forthwith. Madam Speaker, let's end this obsession and charade, and let's get to work. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman.
As he clearly stated, the violence over the summer went on for weeks, if not months. But now, suddenly now, riots are bad. And what's also interesting, and it's a very good point he pointed out, Democrats want to interpret his words. You can interpret his words all you want. It doesn't change the fact of what he said. And the Democrats are very good at that. They're very good at manipulating and twisting arguments to consistently help their narrative. And they've always been brilliant at it. And they've got the entire force and power of the media on their side as well to help them push that narrative. It's a very dangerous situation for America to be in. But it continues to go on. And nobody, except for today, on the floor, are politicians finally standing up against that. Let's have a listen and see what else they have to say about the impeachment trial that President Trump is going through right now.
From Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve.
Yeah, we reserve.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, now we hear talk of the president's notion of a peaceful transfer of power, which apparently means what? Minimal casualties? Now we hear talk of healing after the criminal acts are completed. Never as a criminal defense attorney did I say, Judge, yeah, my guy completed the armed robbery, but let's heal now. No, there was accountability. There was accountability then, there should be accountability now, and there should be impeachment now. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
Now the president talks of healing. No different than when Biden finally was elected. Biden now suddenly talks about unity. Where was the talk of unity all summer long? Do you see how none of this makes sense? It is all discredited verbal diarrhea. That's all that I hear. When I hear these guys talk, when I hear the left talk, all I hear is blah, 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 spewing, regurgitating left-wing media BS. Because that's all it is at this point. That's all it is. It's all hypocritical. They're blaming Trump of now suddenly wanting unity, when in fact, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Nancy Pelosi, after they won the presidency, after they gained control of the White House, suddenly they tell everybody to stop rioting, and now we want unity. Where was the uproar on the Republican side when all that went down? We didn't hear the Republicans call them out, throw it back in their face. No, they went on their business managing this country. The Democrats are hypocritical crybabies, and they constantly prove themselves. I mean, listen to them on the Senate floor. I've heard all morning. I've been listening to this for the last 5 hours, and you can go back. It's on Fox News, and you can listen to every single person. Yes, there's a lot of opposition towards Trump. There's a tremendous amount of opposition towards the Capitol breach, which again is not what we are disputing. There is no disputing the fact that what happened at the Capitol was violent and it was wrong, but that is not what we are contesting here today. Today we are debating whether President Trump incited the violence. He's not going to get accused of this. This whole thing is a complete sham. It's a dog and pony show to make you at home feel like the American government is doing something about it. It's another box ticked before they all can go home, collect their paychecks during coronavirus when you all haven't been, just to ease the tension in America. But it's not going to ease the tension, is it? It's only going to infuriate Trump's base even more. It's only going to further divide the left and the right, not because of their die-hard loyalty to President Trump, but because they don't think what's going on is fair. It's all about fairness on both sides. And that is what everybody has been arguing and screaming about. That is my biggest frustration with this entire thing. Nobody should be calling violence. Neither party should be engaged in violence. Playing the blame game is going to get us nowhere. But the fact of the matter is that the left constantly, after they've committed their own heinous crimes, are now telling us that we need to impeach the president for committing his, when we were told to shut up before. The media told us it was okay. What you see here, there's nothing to see here. We're fighting a cause. Shut up and go home. And we did. We took it. So forgive us for not caring about anything that has to come out of anybody's mouth right now that suddenly has a problem with violence.
The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Reserve, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from North Carolina, a new member of the committee, Ms. Ross.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of the article of impeachment. The President's responsibility for the violence and insurrection that occurred last Wednesday cannot go unanswered. The President has had multiple opportunities to modify his behavior to bring this country together. Instead, he uses his power to further divide us. He is unrepentant. Congress must act for the good of this country. Madam Speaker, I yield back my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Good.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I stand today in support of President Trump and against this sham impeachment proceeding with literally 1 week, 7 days remaining in his term. This is merely the culmination of a 4-year effort to overturn the will of the people and the results for the 2016 election. This is simply a political action intended to tarnish the legacy of a highly successful president who led us to an incredible economy, energy independence, reduction of taxes for millions, regulatory relief for businesses, renewed peace in the Middle East, and stronger border security. This action will only serve to further offend the 75 million people who voted for President Trump and further deepen the division within our nation as we try to move forward with a peaceful transition of power. However, the Democrat majority has determined he's already guilty and there's no need of a trial, and they therefore move forward quickly with this phony impeachment charge. Today, I join my Republican colleagues in standing against this further effort to divide our nation. Thank you, and I yield back.
And yields back. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield.
A sham, they're calling it, and rightly so. This is a sham. This is nothing but a sham. With less than a week to go, or just about a week to go, we're gonna now ram this BS down the American people's throat. After everything that Trump did, that's exactly what they're trying to do. Discredit his legacy. You know, if we just admitted that both sides were wrong, I think the American people would be able to tolerate this whole circus show much better. But nobody wants to admit they're wrong. And I don't think anybody's going to, because if the Democrats didn't admit they were wrong all summer long, why would they admit they were wrong now? And you better believe the Republicans aren't going to admit they're wrong after watching what the left did and how they behaved and how they acted. There's no way they're going to admit that when they themselves didn't admit it. So now we have both parties here saying this is BS. The other party saying very hypocritically, we need to impeach President Trump. The whole thing's going to be let's play the blame game for a few days. Let's make the American people feel that we're actually doing something about it. Nothing's going to happen. Joe Biden's going to come into office, and he's now going to have to deal with an impeachment trial in his first 2 weeks of office, rather than conducting the business, the desperate business of healing this country, of moving forward America. But this is how selfish the Democrats are. They would rather tear this country further apart over a ridiculous impeachment hearing for their own self-gratification, rather than saying, you know what, let's come together. Let's forget this whole nonsense, come together, unite. Everybody's frustrated. We get it. We were frustrated this summer. You're frustrated now. What happened to Congress bringing the people together? What happened to both parties putting aside their difference for the greater good of the American people? This is why Congress has only a 10% approval rate. This is why the country is disgusted and want these old hags out.
Simple. What we saw on January 6th was a person, the President of the United States, incite a crowd to come and attack the Capitol. We have to make sure that we stand up for democracy. If we don't do this, then what are we going to stand for? We stand for democracy, we stand for American values, and I stand for the impeachment of Donald Trump. I yield back to
If we don't do this, if we don't stand for democracy, again, there was none of this over the summer. None of it at all. Nothing. We swept it under the rug.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon.
The gentlewoman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 30 seconds.
On January 6th, President Trump launched an attack against the United States Capitol. I too urge my colleagues to unite, but to unite in love of country and to hold this president accountable. What unites our country is respect for the rule of law. Without accountability for those who would shatter the rule of law by overturning a presidential election, we cannot take seriously the cries of being a united people. This president remains a serious threat to our country and must be held accountable.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from...
So I love how they keep bringing in the rule of the law, and I've heard a lot of them bring in the Constitution. Notice how all of a sudden you've got these Democratic politicians here on the Senate floor talking about the Constitution and how this was a direct violation of our Constitution. Where has all the talk about the Constitution been over the last year? Now suddenly the Democrats want to talk about the rule of the law and our constitutional rights. They even claimed, somebody earlier even claimed that this was a mob presence violates our Constitution. No. A gathering of protesters is within the rights of our constitutional rights. It has to do with our freedom to assemble. There's no excuse for violence, but just because there was a group of angry people there doesn't mean we now violated the Constitution. Violating the Constitution is allowing big tech to silence the President of the United States. Violating the Constitution is allowing the monopoly of big tech like Amazon, Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter to collude and coerce and bring down anybody who doesn't agree with their narrative. That is a direct violation of our Constitution. Protesting is not. And remember, Chris Cuomo on CNN very clearly said, who said protests don't have to be peaceful? Or who said protests have to be peaceful? That's what he said, right? He made it very clear. So Chris Cuomo, why are you suddenly all enraged and furious and pissed off? Because the party that you can't control got a little bit out of line. That's why. That's why this whole thing started. It's because they can't control the right. This is why these Democratic politicians are going batshit crazy right now, because they can't control that side. Well, it's not really a side that they have a right to control. And nobody is going to listen to the likes of Nancy Pelosi right now and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris talk about unity and peace, especially after what they let their supporters and their base get away with. We are way beyond hope for unity right now. It's going to take years. I posted the other day, I said, we either all cut the shit or it's game on for every one of us. There cannot be one set of rules for this side and another set of rules for another side. It has to be a fair and level playing field. And as soon as I start to feel that it's not, guess what? I'm playing by my own rules. And that's exactly what you have right now. 74 million people all ready to play by their own rules. Because after all, it's not a level playing field. Therefore, I don't have to play by your rules because you didn't even tell your own supporters to play by the rules. So what gives you the right to tell me now? Let's head over to the Keyboard Warrior Cam, and I'm going to show you a post that I posted today. And all of the comments after all the show is about you, the American people. And we are calling out the left, and we're calling out the Democratic politicians. We can sit here and watch this for hours, and it's just going to be blah, 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 blah. Hypocrisy after hypocrisy after hypocrisy. There's not a single thing that these politicians are going to say for me to be like, you know what? Maybe Trump was wrong. Not a single damn thing. They lost all credibility in the summer of 2020. Today I posted, the overwhelming support for President Trump right now on the floor by our politicians just goes to show how outrageous this entire impeachment hoax really is. He's out in a few days. This is a complete waste of time and only adds gasoline to the fire and further divides this country even further unnecessarily. The whole thing is unnecessary. Matthew says this is all being done to divide the country and create a civil war. Isn't it sad? Isn't it sad that our politicians can't just deal with this behind closed doors and say what was done was wrong? He's got a few days, let it go. The last thing we want to do is create a civil war. Yet their own egos and their own thirst for power is more important than bringing us together. The blood is on their hands if this country does go to war with each other. They want people to take a side instead of realize this is all theater. They want people to take their bait. Don't do it. It's a great comment. Great comment. He's absolutely right. Don't take the bait. All of us need to say both sides were wrong here. We both are to blame. And if we can do that, we may start to finally see some sort of unity amongst all the chaos. But as long as the left doesn't admit that they were wrong, I will continue to bash them and call out all of them for the hypocrites that they are on this show. Bonnie says the House is working around the clock to impeach a president that has 7 days left in office, yet took 9 months to send you $600. What a great meme. This has got to be the meme of the day. They're working around the clock as we speak to impeach a president that has 7 days left, yet they took 9 months to send you $600, which I still don't believe the American people have even seen yet. And they're not going to see, because now we have to deal with this impeachment hoax. Nigel says the reason they want to get rid of him is that the left, and wisely so, are terrified of Trump supporters. Remember, this has to do with control. It all has to do with control. The left don't know how to control the right. At least Trump had control of his base. Biden will have zero control of the base, and it freaks them out. Hence the reason big tech was so quick to pull conservative-based app Parler off the Apple platform. And then Amazon comes in and says, and we're also deleting your data off our servers. They have silenced the conservative voice. They are that scared to death of the right that they had to silence the President of the United States as well as any right-wing conservative-based app or social media platform. And they want him to run in 24, which will be the case if they succeed in impeaching him. Or they don't want him. I don't think the Republicans are going to ever want Trump to run again. I don't think they're going to take that risk. You have to understand, an immense amount of money goes into putting a presidential candidate forward. And this is another reason why I think the whole thing is so out of control and ridiculously stupid right now and unnecessary. The left want to impeach him so he stands zero chance of running again. He didn't win this election, as if he's going to win the election in 2024. Like he's going to get this. If he didn't have the support of the Republican Party today, how on earth is he going to get it 4 years from now? Not to mention he's going to be like 82 years old. I don't think Trump has it in him to fight again. He took a beating for 4 years, nonstop. He took a beating for 2 years leading up to it. He's tired. He's done. He looks defeated. So not only is there a very low chance of impeaching him before he's even out of office, which is 7 days, but the likelihood of him even wanting to run again is probably very low, and the chance of him even winning is even lower. The odds are so low of Trump being elected again that we are further dividing this country and destroying unity over such a low risk of him running again. The whole thing is madness. It's madness. The left are trying to prove a point to the American people. They're gonna fail at it, and it's gonna only infuriate the rest of the country. The point that they should be trying to make is peace, is unity. That's the point they should be focusing all of their energy on. Why is it so hard for them to just say, listen, we don't agree with what you guys have done. We don't agree with your tone, your attitude, but we understand the frustration. Let's try and come together over this thing. And Biden has not helped. All Biden has done, and he claims he's going to be the president for all Biden has done is come out and said, I'm really disappointed in you guys. Like some old grandfather who's come in and said, look, Johnny, you shouldn't have done that. Well, 14-year-old Johnny in the prime of his teenage years doesn't really care what grandpa has to say about anything, especially after you scold him. So scolding Trump's base right now is not going to do anything but piss them off even more. What does a 14-year-old do, or what does a teenager do when you scold them? They resist even further. They challenge you even harder. They come out swinging. And that's exactly what these supporters are going to do. If Joe Biden doesn't change his attitude and start proving that he is, in fact, the president's or the people's president, all American people. And until he does that, until he swallows his pride, until he stops giving a damn what Pelosi wants or the rest of the Democratic Party wants right now, until he stands up as the president of the United States and says, I condemn the violence, but let's get past this. Let's come together. We can do this. Sure, it might upset the left because for some weird reason, they love the violence and they want us to be divided. But I think that would only be temporarily. I think ultimately everybody would get over it. And the quicker that Joe Biden can do that, the quicker we can all move on. Until then, it's just going to be more name blaming and finger pointing. Let's see what else the keyboard warriors have to say about the insanity of this entire situation. He also did not incite violence, says Julie, so it's ridiculous. And this was my reply to Julie today. I said, you're right. No, he did not. He got the crowd wound up a little bit, but from a motivational rah-rah stance, a patriotic type of wound up. And asked them to peacefully march to the Capitol. Politicians have encouraged their constituents for decades to rise up and protest. This was no different. It doesn't matter what the left thinks what could have happened. He didn't call for that. That's exactly what happened. To which Julie replied with excerpts of the script. And it very clearly says right here, I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Doesn't really sound like he was telling them to attack the building there, did he? Oh, and let's not forget this guy, says Julie. Julie's on a roll today. Julie posted some great stuff. Thank you, Julie, for posting all this wonderful evidence to kind of show the left that they are completely crazy and the fact that they think they've done nothing wrong. Julie says, oh, and don't forget this guy. He was there telling people the lady died before she was dead and trying to get people angry. He is a BLM supporter, Insurgents USA member who now claims he was just there to video what happened. Remember that? He was so quick to say, oh, I'm just documenting. Well, you don't if you're documenting, first of all, you have your press pass on and you don't storm the Capitol with everybody else if you're just documenting. You don't lead the charge as a journalistic photographer. Seriously, are people that dumb to believe that? He was there to get people angry and film it, him and all the other fake Trump supporters. And what's also interesting to notice is that here in the Utah newspaper where he was arrested for rioting, which, by the way, he's already out. He's already spoken to people about no action's going to be further taken. It's all over social media. That's the beauty of social media. That's why the media is so furious and want to lock down anybody who speaks out against them, because they can't control the narrative anymore. They can't control the media. Odd that he was not on CNN, not in jail like all the others as well. How come this guy wasn't on CNN for breaking the law during the BLM movements? How come now he's all over the news for breaking the law? It's all smoke and mirrors. The Dems are running a screenplay, and the actor sucked like the cop running up the stairs, yet stopping for the filming. And I saw that video, and it was insane. The cop literally told people to come in and then started waving his little baton thing, acting like he was telling them to stop. It was the worst acting in history. If you guys haven't seen it, you got to see it. I'll try to post it on my page sometime. But the cop literally was kind of telling people to come on, but then he knew the camera was behind him, and he was then saying, stop, wait, wait, wait. It was just ridiculous. Horrific acting. The Dems are running a screenplay, and the actor sucked like the cop running up the stairs, yet stopping for the filming while being chased. Really, that shit wasn't even popcorn worthy, and it wasn't. It was a joke. It was ridiculous. Lindsay says, I follow his brother. Interesting. His brother's a public figure. His brother's an influencer. Civilized awakening. He is a total opposite. And John, pictured here, meaning this guy, John. Isn't this exciting? This is so exciting. And John, pictured here, wrote such things as race, traitor, and violent slanders on his door because he was a Trump supporter, his own brother. This brother is troubled. So John, this guy right here, John, okay, posted attacks against Trump towards his brother. And we're supposed to believe that he is a Trump supporter documenting the whole thing. And John, pictured here, wrote such things as race traitor. So he called his brother a race traitor and violent slanders on his door because he was a Trump supporter. This brother is trouble and in constant trouble. The one I follow, his name is James, is so soft-spoken, articulate, factual, level-headed, and grounded. It's incredible. And not to acknowledge John for what he is and is proof that BLM was there and was astonishing. That is how insane this situation is. There's so much proof. And the media take us for fools. They think we're not going to find all of this out. You can't hide today. Everything's going to come out. More so now. There were 1 million iPhones videoing what happened at the Capitol. You ask anybody who was there, except for the anti-Trumpers who just had to be there to talk about their version of the BS. But if you talk to most people, the day went fairly well until the very end, which was sad, unacceptable, completely irresponsible. But overall, the day went quite well. And there are enough video testimony to prove it. See what else the keyboard warriors have to say today on my feed about the hypocrisy of Donald Trump being impeached. So I wrote, for those of you listening, meaning to the hearings today, the impeachment hearings, for those of you listening, notice how the Democrats, and you can go back and watch this at your own time, it's on Fox News. For those of you listening, notice how the Democrats are now using the Constitution as means to argue their point. Now they want to refer to the Constitution. Now they want to refer to the Constitution. What a joke. This whole time they have violated so many constitutional laws, and now all of a sudden it was unconstitutional. The violence, the mob riot was unconstitutional. No, it was a protest. It got out of hand, but it was still a protest. And in America, protests are 100% legal, according to our First Amendment right. Freedom of speech. The goalposts are always moving. Do you guys feel like this is? I do feel like this is the situation with the Democratic Party. Like I don't know where to kick the ball, because today it's one rule, tomorrow it's another rule. Today you can burn cities down, but now you can't. Today you can storm a government building, but no, now you can't. Like the goalposts are constantly moving here. If this could summarize the Democratic Party, that is the meme of the left. Bonnie says, only when it suits them. Only when it suits them are the goalposts allowed to move. The insanity is so obvious. Mob violence, according to the Democrats, mob violence is now unconstitutional. You can't make this garbage up. It truly is, says Sherry. They're pissing on us and telling us it's raining, even while reaching for the toilet paper. And Frank, I'm going to end with this comment because this is phenomenal. Frank states they hate the Constitution in all of its amendments, except the 25th. That's exactly the situation. The Democrats will only use the Constitution when it suits them, but their favorite amendment is the 25th Amendment. So I look at this hearing today and I think, what an absolute joke. Right now, they're on the floor debating how outrageous President Trump acted, how he incited violence, even though he didn't, and that our freedom and our democracy has been seriously fractured. While only a few months ago, the left continued to riot, loot, and burn our cities to the ground. And I won't let them forget that. And I will call them out every single show. Because after all, they set the tone. They set the precedent. They gave America its blessing to fight. They gave us our blessing to be violent. They said it was okay. So now it's the right's turn. You can't put the brakes on it just like that. It doesn't work that way. You're going to have to admit guilt and that you were wrong first for the other side to cut the BS. That is how we will finally unite each other. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We'll see what happens with the impeachment hearing. The next 2 days is going to be extremely thrilling. Hopefully, we can just drop the whole thing and move on and start healing America. We will see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out YouMadeItPolitical.com.